One phone call, one question, and suddenly the possibility of Christian Eriksen wearing a Wrexham shirt disappeared because of the cameras that made everything possible in the first place. All right, Wrexham fans, if you love the Red Dragons like I do, hit that subscribe button right now and let's dive into this, because what I'm about to tell you reveals everything about what this club has become and the price of fame. Michael Williamson, Wrexham CEO, has just dropped an absolute bombshell. Last summer, Wrexham approached Christian Eriksen. Yes, that Christian Eriksen, Denmark international, Premier League winner, a midfielder who's played at the very highest level of world football. And he said no. Not because of the money, not because of the level, not because he doubted the project or Phil Parkinson or the ambition of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. He said no because of the documentary. Christian Eriksen didn't want to be part of Welcome to Wrexham. He didn't want cameras following him around. He valued his privacy more than the opportunity to be part of one of football's most compelling stories. And you know what? That tells you everything about where Wrexham are right now. They're big enough to approach world-class players. They're ambitious enough to make the call. But the very thing that's made them globally famous, that documentary series that's brought millions of fans from around the world, is also the thing that scares some players away. This isn't just about one transfer that didn't happen. This is about the double-edged sword of celebrity. This is about what Wrexham have gained and what they've lost in the process. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. Let's set the scene properly. Summer 2024. Wrexham have just won back-to-back promotions. National League champions in 2023, League 2 champions in 2024. They're heading into League 1 with momentum, with investment, with Hollywood backing and global attention. Phil Parkinson's building a squad, big money's being spent, club record fees for players like Kiefer Moore, proven League 1 and Championship quality coming through the door. The ambition is clear. Don't just survive in League 1, challenge for promotion, get to the Championship. But behind the scenes, Wrexham's recruitment team are thinking bigger. Much bigger. They're looking at the profile the club now has. The documentary series has made Wrexham one of the most watched teams in world football. Millions of people who've never been to North Wales, who couldn't find Wrexham on a map 3 years ago, are now emotionally invested in this club. That global platform opens doors. It makes conversations possible that would have been absurd just a few years back. And one of those conversations was with Christian Eriksen's representatives. Think about who Christian Eriksen is. This isn't some journeyman midfielder looking for one last payday. This is a player who collapsed on the pitch at Euro 2020, suffered a cardiac arrest, and then came back to play at the highest level of world football. He joined Brentford, proved he could still compete in the Premier League, and then signed for Manchester United. At United, he was brilliant. Composed on the ball, vision for days, that Scandinavian technical quality that makes everything look effortless. He might not have been the quickest anymore, but his football brain was still world-class. By summer 2024, Eriksen was 32 years old and coming to the end of his United contract. He had options. European clubs were interested, but Wrexham saw an opportunity and took their shot. Michael Williamson recently revealed exactly what happened. Wrexham's recruitment team reached out to Eriksen's camp. They made their pitch, the Hollywood project, the global platform, playing under Phil Parkinson, an experienced manager who knows how to get teams promoted, the chance to be part of something unique. On paper, it wasn't completely mad. Yes, Eriksen had played Champions League football. Yes, he'd won trophies at the highest level, But he was at a stage in his career where different factors start to matter. Family, lifestyle, being part of a project that means something. Wrexham could offer all of that, plus the financial backing to pay proper wages, plus the promise of challenging for promotion, plus the chance to be a legend at a club with history and soul. But there was one problem, one massive, unavoidable problem that Wrexham couldn't get around, no matter how much money they offered or how compelling the pitch was. The documentary. Here's where everything changes. Here's the moment that defines not just this story, but what Wrexham have become. Eriksen's representatives came back to Wrexham with their answer. And it wasn't about football. It wasn't about wages or contract length or playing time or tactics. It was about privacy. Christian Eriksen didn't want to be unwelcome to Wrexham. He didn't want cameras in the dressing room capturing his reactions. He didn't want his family filmed. He didn't want his life turned into content for Disney+. And you can understand that, can't you? Especially for someone like Eriksen, who's been through what he's been through. The cardiac arrest at the Euros was broadcast live to millions. His most vulnerable moment became global news. Every step of his recovery was documented by media around the world. Maybe after all that, the last thing he wanted was more cameras, more scrutiny, more of his life being turned into a narrative for public consumption. So he said no, politely, respectfully, but definitively no. Wrexham's recruitment team must have been gutted. To get that close to signing a player of that caliber, only for it to fall apart over something you can't negotiate around. You can increase wages, you can offer longer contracts, you can promise playing time or captaincy or whatever else. But you can't turn off the cameras. Not now. Not when the documentary is fundamental to what Wrexham have become. Think about what that documentary has done for this club. It's brought money, attention, and fans from around the world. But it's also a filter. It attracts certain types of players and repels others. Wrexham have to be okay with that. They can't change it now. The documentary is part of the DNA, so they need to focus on signing players who want to be part of that story, not players who see it as a burden. What did you have done if you were Eriksen? If you'd already experienced your most vulnerable moment broadcast to the world, would you want even more cameras following you around? Or would you choose privacy, even if it meant turning down an interesting project? When Michael Williamson revealed this story recently, the reaction from Wrexham supporters was fascinating. Some were gutted that it didn't happen. Imagine Christian Eriksen pulling on a red shirt at the racecourse ground. That vision, that composure, dictating matches in League One. It would have been extraordinary. But others understood completely. They respected Eriksen's decision. They appreciated that not every player wants to be on camera constantly. And they recognized that this is the trade-off Wrexham have made. The documentary has opened doors, but it's also closed some. On social media, fans were debating what this says about Wrexham's transfer strategy. Are they approaching players who are realistic targets, or are they shooting too high? Should they focus on players who actually want to be part of the documentary experience, rather than chasing big names who might not fit the culture? The media picked up on it too. BBC Wales ran the story. The Leader covered it locally. National outlets used it as another example of Wrexham's unique position in modern football. A League One club with Hollywood backing and global reach, but also with constraints that other clubs don't face. Phil Parkinson never publicly commented on specific transfer targets that didn't happen, and he didn't this time either. But you have to imagine he understands the situation. As a manager, you want the best players possible. But you also need players who are fully committed to what the club is trying to build. And if a player's uncomfortable with the documentary aspect, maybe that's not the right fit anyway. Maybe Wrexham need players who embrace the cameras, who see the platform as an opportunity rather than an intrusion. So, what does all this actually mean for Wrexham moving forward? First, it confirms what we already suspected. Wrexham are thinking bigger than most League One clubs. The fact they even approached Eriksen shows the level of ambition. They're not content to just sign players from the division below. They're taking punts on world-class talent when the opportunity arises. Most of those punts won't come off. Eriksen said no. There are probably other big names who've said no for various reasons that we'll never hear about. But one day, one of those punts will land. Some top-level player will decide